through Matthew, doing chapter 14 today. And remember what kind of came before it? We had all the stuff about the seeds and planting and sowing and all those things, mustard seeds, all this kind of. We talked about the pearl of great price, and just like it seems like God is collecting everything, and then it'll all kind of be judged and all that stuff. And then we have Jesus, as I'm reading my headings, it says, "Prophet without his honor in his own town, that his town, no one is really paying attention to him, and so really wants him there." So that's kind of where we are. What I'm really seeing as the point of Matthew, it seems, and this could all change, but that it really seems that it's about, like, it really seems to be attacking the Pharisees, like, pretty consistently. Like, it's like where in Mark we kept seeing like the disciples and Peter would see some shade for a little bit. The Pharisees would see some shade. The people around would see some shade. Like, yeah, the disciples aren't really doing like things that are too hot, but they're not really throwing them all that much shade. But man, every chance, like the Pharisees are doing that. And I kind of think that's kind of the purpose, where it's like the ones that should have held the Torah, the law, the ones that should have held the spirituality of God for the people, are using it for their own advantage. It seems to me that's what's being done. So that's, yeah, go ahead.
Over the weekend, Sunday, you mentioned besides Pharisees, it was
Sadducees.
Sadducees. What are Sadducees?
Sadducees. Glenn, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to Pharisees.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in a resurrection, and Jesus always used that to get them at each other's throat.
Yeah. They're another religious hierarchy.
They were basically, were rich. They didn't believe in a resurrection. They believed you leave a good life and everything's going to get blessings while it is. The Pharisees were more men of the people. The people really identified more with Pharisees than Sadducees. And of course, there was the scribes, and they were just the recorders, ones that diligently kept the.
Pharisees did believe in
a resurrection.
Yes.
Resurrection.
And that's a big thing that comes out in the Gospels. But it's still similar to Pharisees, another kind of religious ruling class type of thing, but just a different sect.
Oh, okay.
Like that's, yeah.
So did they have power at the temple too, or was that just?
Well, the Sadducees racially were around the temple. They took care of that. Also, both groups were involved in the Sanhedrin, which is the ones that condemned Jesus to death.
Yeah.
I mean, it was them, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, that really, we all blame the Romans, but really it's really, if you want to put blame on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go in that direction.
And was that an elected thing, the Sanhedrin?
Yeah. Let's see. I believe that the Apostle Paul possibly was a member of that. He certainly was a Pharisee. That's what I doubt. And it's kind of interesting because he was a Pharisee. His father was. He was. But his mother was a Benjamite. Interesting enough to see the two different battles that must have gone on in his mind even then.
Yeah. Yeah. Benjamin, tribe of Benjamin, there's 12 tribes. And most of the Pharisees and the Sadducees mostly came from the tribe of Levi, and so like coming from the tribe of Benjamin, which is always known as kind of a lesser tribe type of thing, there would have been like conflict between like two different tribes of people, which we even see that today, where you have different tribes of people. It's like the Lutherans and the Methodists always get along.
We call it denomination.
Yeah, we call it denominations. all that stuff. So did we clear it up, Jim? Is it clear as mud now?
Thanks.
Yeah.
When it was weekend.
Yeah. We could say
They dress differently too, completely differently. If you look at the history of the two, you'll see that boy, the Sadducees look completely different than the Pharisees did. Pharisees are what we normally think of the Hebrews looking at, because we sort of use that today too. They sort of dress more like they would have.
Okay.
Yeah. Sadducees were different.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? If you get off the plane in Tel Aviv, you'll have a group of Jews standing there wanting to put on you phylacteries, which are headgear and hard gear. And, they'll ask you first, are you a Jew? If you are, they'll try to convince you to put it on. But if you're not, move on.
Oh, really?
That's true.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. So, all right. So we'll continue here. It's kind of a fascinating reading today. So we're gonna share the screen.
At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report about Jesus and said to his servants,
"This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him."
For Herod had laid hold of John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because John had said to him,
"It is not lawful for you to have her."
And although he wanted to put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was celebrated, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Therefore he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. So she, having been prompted by her mother, said,
"Give me John the Baptist's head here on a platter."
And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, because of the oaths and because of those who sat with him, he commanded it to be given to her. So he sent and had John beheaded in prison. And his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. Then his disciples came and took away the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard it, he departed from there by boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. And when Jesus went out, he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and healed their sick. When it was evening, his disciples came to him.
"This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away that they may go into the villages and buy themselves food."
They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat.
We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish.
Bring them here to me.
Then he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled.
"Oh, it is a ghost!"
They cried out for fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them.
"Be of good cheer! It is I! Do not be afraid!"
And Peter answered him,
"Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water."
come.
And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out,
Lord, save me.
and immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him.
Oh, you of little faith. Why did you doubt?
And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him.
Truly, you are the Son of God.
When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all that surrounding region, brought to him all who were sick, and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. And as many as touched it were made perfectly well.
Okay, so interesting stuff in this one. There's some interesting connections and things like that. So let's start talking about it. What did you see?
I think it's kind of interesting that forget that John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin.
Oh yeah.
We forget that about what happened when he was in the womb and Mary showed up. He thinks that he recognized him yet as an infant, a fetus inside. But here the Tetrarch is saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we had him killed, and this sounds like him again."
Yeah. Like it's interesting that it goes back in time for a second.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
and Mark does this too, like in this story. But that they heard of all these reports about Jesus and his servants, like John the Baptist, type of thing. And then like verse 3, it's goes back in time to explain what has previously happened. And which is interesting. You can tell that this gospel writer and Mark does the same thing. They're going back in time to place this event here in the story for a reason. Like this is kind of a big cataclysmic story, and the stories that we have following it, even in our own narrative here, are built off of this story about John the Baptist, and so it's kind of telling some things. And remember, this is right after Jesus says, "A prophet's without honor, even in his own country, in his own house." Like that's, and we see John the Baptist is beheaded here, and it's almost like it's the same people that killed John the Baptist are upset about him. It's like a little prophecy for the future about Jesus, that type of thing. So I don't know what else stood out to you.
Was Peter testing Jesus when he says, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water"?
Oh,
It struck me as very odd.
Yeah.
I'll come, but only if you command me.
Yeah. Like, what does that display in Peter?
Well, not the full belief.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. I said, he gets out there and then it got a little windy and he panicked.
Yeah. Well, and I think testing the Lord, like in stuff or something like that, like it's never really seen as this positive thing. Like that's despite sometimes our efforts to make it seem like it's positive. Like that's this week's sermon's on Gideon, and he like does a bunch of testing and all that. And I'm amazed at the amount of resources just laud his spirituality. I'm like, no, like that's not how any of this is presented. Like that's and I mean, are we getting a taste of that like here as well with Peter? Yeah, I don't know.
Because Jesus could have calmed the wind before he walked out to the boat.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. He was like surfing on the waves.
Yeah. So,
That's
so maybe it was meant to test Peter and maybe.
or if he would just not worry about the wind and the waves around him, and like, what are some of these wind and waves that Peter is worrying about?
Yeah,
Like,
that's the way I see it too.
What would you say, Pam?
That's the way I see it too. Like the point is, First Peter doesn't have really faith. Well, Lord, if it's you, command me. Okay, fine. So he does that, and when he has his focus on Jesus, he starts to walk. But then when he gets out of faith and into fear, then is when he falls. So I guess I kind of see that as point is, as long as you have faith in Jesus, you're going to be okay. If not, you're not going to be able to be at that level to do what he commands you to do, what he wants you to do, what you should do.
Yeah.
My 2 cents. I don't know. It's just also a window into the faith, because at the end he says, oh, everybody in the boat says, we believe you're the Son of God. But is this showing again how when it comes down to him thinking he's going to be dead, then the faith goes, because he denies him then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a foretaste. Yeah, you believe that until it gets really tight.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I don't know.
So, are we getting a foretaste of Good Friday with this whole narrative? Are we getting a full foretaste? Where the beheading of John the Baptist, for the pleasure and power of the ruling class, they behead John the Baptist, and are we seeing that Peter, even though he's filled with all this big talk, because it's like when you read it through here, it's kind of funny. With he says, "Do you want me to come out to you, Jesus?" And Jesus says, did Jesus sure, man, come on. That's like Jesus didn't say, "Come on out, Peter." Right. Is that, and I'm not sure, is that like, and I might be mixing up the Gospels, but I don't think so. But Peter always going "I'll stand up for you."
Yeah.
And the rest of these, they're going to leave you.
Yeah.
Not me.
Still it gets rough.
Is it a similar shape?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting too. My note here says that the alternate to "if it is you" is "since it is you."
Since edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he did believe it was him coming.
Yeah.
Since it's you, let me come out.
Yeah.
It's kind of showed that Peter, like you said, from Good Friday, that's Peter, cut off the guy's ear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He rises to the heights and sinks.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing at Philippi. Jesus says, "Who does everybody say I am?" And they all come up with prophet this is, "You're the Christ, the Son of God." And Jesus blesses him and said, "Blessed are you that you have been revealed this by God." And then a couple verses later, Jesus said, "I got to die." And he said, "No." And he says, "Get behind me, Satan."
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with denying him.
Yeah.
He says, "I would die for you." And he says, "You're going to deny me." Like that.
Yeah.
Like alarms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jesus doesn't leave him there.
Yeah.
Can I read my?
Yeah.
Can I,
Go ahead, Joe.
Can I read my footnote on verse 28? It says, Peter was not putting Jesus to the test, something we are told not to do. Instead, he was the only one in the boat to react in faith. His impulsive request led him to experience a rather unusual demonstration of God's power. Peter started to sink because he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the high waves around him. His faith wavered when he realized what he was doing. We may not walk on water, but we do walk through tough situations. If we focus on the waves of difficult circumstances around us without looking to Jesus for help, we too may despair and sink. To maintain your faith when situations are difficult, keep your eyes on Jesus' power rather than on your inadequacies.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think that's good. And I think this is kind of capping what has come right before it. We have the beheading of John the Baptist, and in that story, what kind of stood out to you in all of that? Like, that's because there's some interesting things about John the Baptist, which I think they're kind of saying, they're kind of cloaking how they're talking about Jesus and his trial and death and arrest too, and talking about with John the Baptist. So is there?
Well, he didn't want to kill him. He didn't want to kill John the Baptist.
Yeah.
It was, he makes his oath. And he said that, because she danced so beautifully and all, anything you want, I'll give you. And she, whoa, did I not expect this one?
Yeah.
That's why the Bible tells us not to make oaths.
Yeah.
Be very careful about our yay.
Well, careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Like that's, and that's what I think that oath falls under that category. Yeah.
And then Herod is the king of the Jews.
Yeah.
So he lets that oath, kill God's messenger, God's prophet, and just like what you said, he going after the Pharisees and, the leaders of the Jews, just showing how far away they are from God.
And Herod is worried, like the way it's presented in here. So you have like verse 5, although he wanted to put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. Like, it's the way I put this in, and it's a different story, but like he's just Herod is just inept in this story. He cannot make decisions like that. Like, that's like, you can tell he wants to do something here, but he can't. And just it's all just like building and building and building. And does it say in this story that he liked him? In Mark, it says that he liked him.
Mark it says.
Yeah, Mark, it says. I don't think it says it here.
Like under that.
Does it say?
Like,
yeah, not here. In Mark, that's kind of a whole point. Mark's point is like he's saying these ruling class, like, they don't know what they're doing. Like, and this one, I think it's telling kind of a different narrative, is that they're doing all these things because they really just want to kill him, but they're scared that there's going to be ramifications, and it's all this weird politicking.
It's also interesting, though, that in 5 it says he wanted to kill John.
Yeah.
But he was afraid because of the people consider him a prophet. But he does it in a sense under the cover of someone asking him to do it, and they had him do an oath.
Yeah.
I had no choice.
Oh yeah. So it's slimy.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and the whole thing is slimy. Like, he does it because of the sexy dance.
Well,
like, that's with his, his wife's daughter did the sexy dance in front of he and all of his friends at his birthday party. Like, that's gross. Yeah. Like, and I think it's all gross, and that's what that in the midst of all that. In all of that, nothing, like a birthday party it's fun, but it's nothing, right? It's not all like all of that. It's just a party. That's what causes John the Baptist to lose his life. And you see that Herod, not really a good leader. He's just slimy. The whole situation is slimy. And so,
they were dropped from all the line.
Yeah. Like, it's just all, it's all pointless. It's all pointless. And so, and they bring out his head on a platter afterwards. Like, it's all disgusting. And so, and that has ramifications and his disciples take the body away. And in verse 13, when Jesus heard about this, he went to like basically be by himself. All right. And then it says, and when the multitudes heard about it, they also followed him out there. So Jesus went to go be by himself. Like he's like, I need some time, guys. And everyone like follows him out there. I gotta make sure this is doing different moves than Mark does. Mark is doing very calculated moves, talking about the king. Matthew is not making those same moves. But I think because Herod is such a terrible leader, and he's the king of the Jews, he's the king and he's a terrible king, that the multitudes come out and he has compassion. Like they've got nowhere to go. They can't go to the king. They can't go to this. And he has compassion on them, heals their sick. And like the disciples finally find him, in the evening, and like, you need to send these people away. Like that's like, they're hungry. They're going to start passing out, all that stuff. And this is when, I always think it's funny that Jesus says, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. Like, we don't have enough, and it's interesting what they tell is 5 loaves and 2 fish. So what everything here is filled with symbolism. So what does all this mean? 5 loaves, 2 fish. What do you think? Have you ever thought about that before? Jesus quotes it later. He's like, because you don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, the manna.
Manna and 5.
Number 7, complete.
Yeah, number 7 is there. I think it's like complete. That's like the 7th day of creation. 7 always has a sense of completion. I don't know if I explained this in a while. So the numbers in the Bible, some people go too far with the numbers in the Bible and they ascribe very strict meaning onto it. I view numbers in the Bible the correct way, and it's I view them like memes or emojis. That these numbers, they mean something, but they're like hints at something. They're like hints at something. So when Lee is saying 7, that's a good number. Like that's a good. Well, you already made a bad number joke earlier, Jim. Like when the 13th, you're gonna be lucky 13th. Like that's, we still kind of view numbers in the same way, just not as strong. It's not as strong. But when we, design buildings to not have 13 floors, like that's, it's still in our world. But 5 to this audience, what does 5 mean? Because they split it off. What do you think? What's 5 a signifier to? Well, you guys know. How many sides is the Pentagon? 5. It's the Pentateuch.
Yeah.
The Pentateuch. It's like the Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So, which is like the books of Moses is what they're called. And that is like the Pentateuch is the Torah. That is like as Jewish as it gets. And all this Judaism. So think about coming off of this. Yeah.
Was there an Old Testament back then?
Yeah. It was just called the Testament.
Oh, okay.
It was no New Testament. Yeah, it was no New Testament.
Okay, so it was the same.
Yeah, they had a lot of the same books. I think the whole thing was complete by then, wasn't it? Pretty much.
Well, what you have to understand is you got to remember back then they included a lot of the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Into that.
Yeah. So the Apocrypha are these intertestamental books like Maccabees.
Maybe they're the 2 fish.
Yeah. But I think like the 5. So there was also in the Old Testament, as Protestants, we typically like every word in this thing has like equal weight and all that stuff. That's not real. I'm really not that way. But anyway, the Jews really viewed the first 5 books as higher and above everything else. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Like those
were written by Moses.
Yeah, the books of Moses, the law. And that's so typically, like if you go to a Jewish synagogue now or something like that, at some point they'll like parade out a Torah or something like that, and we can like dance with it and hold it around and all that stuff. That's typically the first 5. Like, and that's kind of like the most important thing. I think that's what's going on here, that you have the Jewish king, which is inept. And then you have Jesus who having compassion on all these people who are out mourning their inept king because he can't even see the prophets around, right? They're out mourning him. And Jesus is like, what do you have? And they're like 5 loaves and 2 fish. Like it's like staring at you. It's like, it's showing you I think the competency of Jesus, and it's all here. And that competency continues with these Jewish themes. So he has everyone sit down, and then verse 19 is long. He commands the multitudes to sit down in the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. What does that sound like?
Feed.
It sounds like communion. It just does. That I don't think that's an accident. Like I think we're.
You didn't tell us what the fish meant.
Oh, the 2 fish? Yeah. Because I don't know. So I read something. Let's see. Where did I read that? In my very short getting things together. You were waiting. I love it. It's you. Are you? And that's what I'm going to get there. Let's see here. Where did I read? I read that 5 loaves and 2 somewhere was like a let's see, the numbers 5 and 2 may also be symbolic. This may be another allusion to Jesus as a Moses figure who was brought to author the first 5 books of the Bible, who carried the 2 tablets. That's what those sound like. That wouldn't be. That's not a bad way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah. I thought I was like, I read something somewhere like that, and so the 2 so again, this kind of a Moses allusion, and so this all sounds like communion. It sounds like it's not communion. It all sounds like it, and so. And so if you could let that communion analogy continue going, the way we practice communion is an allusion to Passover, which is also Moses, like all this, there's all this high Jewishness happening here. And then, they collect all the fragments, and how many basketfuls are left over? 12, the 12 tribes of Israel. Like yeah.
It was the wording. Okay.
Yeah.
They took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces. The 12 broken tribes.
Oh, okay. Like that's interesting.
They are broken.
That's good too. Like that's good. All right.
And what's interesting? Oh, I'll do this.
Yeah.
When you read James, it starts off with verse 1 saying to the 12 lost tribes. 12 is mentioned, which is interesting because that meant that even before the temple was destroyed, they were all leaving. The southern tribes were leaving. Benjamin and were leaving. And of course, they were kicked out by the Romans afterwards.
Yeah.
They were leaving then because he wrote it before the actual destruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always wondered when I read that, I understand was 10,
Oh yeah. But like that's these 12 tribes of Israel and all that. Yeah. And so you have this this high Jewishness. We're off of the king of the Jews, Herod, killing a prophet.
And breaking the law by marrying his brother's divorced wife. Yeah.
Terrible king. And then you have all this kind of high Jewishness going on with Jesus. Like he goes out to mourn, everyone else is mourning, the loss of the prophet, not having a king like it's any good, all these things, which sounds like the prophets, which sounds like, when we went through 1st and 2nd Samuel, it sounds like all of this stuff, right? And then there's 5 loaves and 2 fish, which the two tablets. That's kind of a fun way of looking at that. And 7 altogether is a good Jewish number. And then you end up with 12 basketfuls left over, and there's 5,000 people, 5,000 men there. Like that's, again, you have that 5, or 5 number. And so, and he's going to ask, and the only reason why I know he's going to ask is we just read it a couple weeks ago, or I just read it in the gospel lesson a couple weeks ago, that he's frustrated at the disciples. Don't you guys remember? How many basketfuls? How many were back? Nope.
And I think it's probably significant when Jesus says, you feed them, because it's like they were satisfied with what, Jesus, the living bread, kind of thing. And you feed them, and they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do that. But that's what he's foreshadowing that they will be doing in the future.
And so I'm going to talk for a second about Chris Escher's view of miracles in the Bible. Because one of the things that I kind of grew up hearing a lot about this from a lower view of miracles in the Bible is that, it showed like when everyone just put together all their morsels together, like everyone was able to feed each other. Like, I don't like views like that because it doesn't say that here. Like that's, you guys understand what I'm saying? What people are doing, they're like, oh, the miracle was that everyone shared and all that stuff. Well, what the miracle is that the Jewish king is awful. While mourning, all these Jewish things happen around it. Like that's, the miracle is that in all these cases, all of this stuff, it just works out to the 12 tribes of Israel. Again, there's 12 disciples. That's intentional too. And you have these 12 basketfuls, and there's 5,000, there's 5 loaves, 2 fish, like all this stuff. It's all very Jewish. And Jesus is basically showing it's like, as John says, like, he's like, I'm the way. I'm the way. And it's almost like he's like saying like the vine and the branches too, that he gives it to the disciples and the disciples get out to feed everyone. Like there's all this stuff going on here. And then that leads into walking on the sea.
And I think too, something that I didn't really consider until we're studying it too, is Jesus was initially for the Jewish people. It was the idea that they would then be the light of the world.
Yeah.
And they, it's like in today's age, we see them as very different than us, but they were supposed to be, all of them were supposed to be the first Christians.
Yeah.
And so putting the law in the tablets, that, like you said, very Jewish.
Yeah.
As appropriately it should be when Jesus was alive.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, and I don't know, I don't know how Matthew's going to render it, but I know how Mark renders it, and is that the feeding of the 4,000 just after this in the next chapter. Like that's the way that I view it in Mark. And so he's going, this feeding of the 5,000 is right after this king killing a prophet. Feeding the 4,000 is usually the way I interpret it. He's for everybody. That the 4, I think, stands for the 4 corners of the world. And so there, and the numbers, are much more general goodness and all of it. And I think in Mark, we'll find out when we get to it. In Mark, he's in a Gentile region and he feeds the 12,000, and not in this Jew. So we're in the high Jewish feeding right now, and basically like almost sounding like a Passover type of idea, with all this allusions to Moses and all that. and then I think we go into this Gentile region afterwards. So then so we come off of that feeding of the 5,000. Immediately you get the disciples, they get in the boat and they go across, and Jesus, just wants to get away again. He sends everyone away, and he's praying alone. And then, maybe he's looking down off the mountain. You see the poor disciples out in the distance, struggling or something. They're like, who knows? He's like, oh man. And he goes out there, and Mark's story doesn't have Peter coming out. So Matthew's telling a different story than Mark is, and Matthew wants to show us something different. And I kind of wonder if it's just that continued, kind of like Tracy says, he came first for the Jews, then the Gentiles. This terrible king, but this also with this story of John the Baptist beheading, we get this precursor to how Jesus is going to die. And then when Peter's like, I'll come out to you, and then looks at all the wind and the waves, and it's like this big precursor to what's going on. I don't know. What are the thoughts?
Pastor,
Yeah, Lee, go ahead.
he says, take heart, it is I.
Yeah.
Now that's
Verse 27.
Who shall we say? Say it is I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
I am. Yeah.
And
Now
that's what I thought when I first saw it.
Well, okay. Let me look up something. What were you going to say, Glenn?
I was going to mention that actually, remember when they left the Exodus, there was a mixed multitude of people who had accepted the Jewish faith.
Yeah.
So there were Gentiles within the Hebrew faith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Don't forget that. So there's a lot of people say, oh, he just came to the Jews. Well, he's coming to the Jews, but they had already been inviting in Gentiles. Yeah, they're close to the
Jewish faith, not necessarily just the lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I assume the fourth watch of the night it's dark. Was it unusual to take a boat out in the dark and go across the sea?
Fourth watch is 3 until 6 in the morning. You say, 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like the middle of the night. Like,
When they go out nowadays, they go. But they have lights nowadays. Yeah, but they have lights.
It's not light yet, or fishing.
Right. Yeah, I just thought and it hadn't occurred to me that.
well, it mentions it.
Yeah.
Like that's whenever these gospel writers, whenever they mention something, you gotta take that seriously, because it's mentioned. Like that's. I'm trying to see that I am thing, and it's like kinda like the Greek isn't playing any words, isn't playing coy. Like it just uses ego as I, and so like that's the word for I. But it could be playing it's. I don't think it's bad to look into it like that. Like that's. So let's see. Yeah. So after the thing with the boat and the disciples worship her like you are the Son of God, Messiah language. They cross over and they go to land of Gennesaret. So this land of Gennesaret, does anyone know anything about that land?
Fertile valleys, Armand, it's good land.
Is it Jewish? Is it Gentile?
It's a narrow plain about 4,000 long and less than 2 miles wide. It's on the west side of the state of Galilee. Near the north end there, and then we're in the north end, north of Mount Kala.
Okay.
So the town Jewish plain. The plain is considered a garden spot on fertile long land.
Okay. Fair.
That is Jewish.
Yeah, Jewish area. And so Jewish area, he goes over there, and when the men of this place recognized him, they sent out all the surrounding region and brought them all that were sick and begged him that might touch them, him of his garment, as many of it touched it and they made perfect. So that's, so you gotta have this story where this high Jewish stuff isn't working out, but Jesus is bringing goodness in the midst of all of that. And so that's it. That's good. You want to have any thoughts? Yeah.
Question on the flashback. Flashback starts at verse 3.
Yes.
Where does it end? Or is it the whole rest of the chapter?
Well, like that's, I was thinking that same question, Jim. Like because I kind of wonder if it ends.
I think it ends.
Does it end when?
I think it's put like the wavy flashbacks on version. It's just not too definitive. Oh, the flashback. He just started wanting to kill him, but he was afraid. So I think that was.
But it says that when Jesus heard about it.
Yeah, but that's after. I think the loaves and fishes were part of the flashback too.
Yeah, because the flashback is the death of.
So.
Yeah. Like and so these loaves of fish. I don't know.
Walking out of water.
Because you have all these then statements.
And the nuns make us think it's not flashback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it's odd. I was thinking that same thing, Jim. But I don't have a good answer for us. But remember, keep that in our minds because it may go forward and then come back and then just jump down again,
or maybe even goes into 15.
Yeah, because I think narratively, it's wanting us to see that because all these things were happening before. So what I would like to do, we have just a couple extra minutes. We're not going to be able to talk about it, so we'll read it again. But I want to read 15, and because it has the feeding of the 4,000, and and so more loaves and fishes, and I think that'll be good to just do it all kind of at the same time. Fish. Yeah. So it's so we'll read it. We'll probably be done when we do that.
I remember you gave a message once when people put fish on the bumper sticker there.
Oh yeah. Big symbol. Well, that's if you read Kyler talked about that in his little. Oh yeah, when we were doing, we did confirmation this week, and Kyler was confirmed, and so we talked about taking the Lord's name in vain and then putting like a fish on a bumper sticker or a business card or something like that. Because you're like, it's fine if you want to do that. And like, I don't think you need to be tarred and feathered, but it's like, why are we trying to use someone's good graces they have on God to view on us? We're using God's name to make ourselves look better. And so that's
worse if you're a terrible driver.
Oh, you're a terrible driver. That's kind of the point too.
Cut someone off.
Yeah.
You're gonna put that on. Make sure you live that life.
Yeah.
All many.
Yeah. That's good advice.
All right, so let's listen to 15 real quick. So we'll share, and then here we go.
Then the scribes and Pharisees who were from Jerusalem came to Jesus.
Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders?
For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread.
Why do you also transgress the commandment of God because of your tradition? For God commanded, saying, Honor your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, Whoever says to his father or mother, Whatever profit you might have received from me is a gift to God, then he need not honor his father or mother. Thus you have made the commandment of God of no effect by your tradition. Hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, These people draw near to me with their mouth, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men.
When he had called the multitude to himself, he said to them,
Hear and understand. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man.
Then his disciples came and said to him,
Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?
Every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted will be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch.
Then Peter answered and said to him,
Explain this parable to us.
Are you also still without understanding? Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man.
Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him,
Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed.
But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him,
Send her away, for she cries out after us.
I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Then she came and worshipped him.
Lord, help me.
It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs.
Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table.
Oh, woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire.
Oh.
And her daughter was healed from that very hour.
Oh.
Jesus departed from there, skirted the Sea of Galilee, and went up on the mountain and sat down there. Then great multitudes came to him, having with them the lame, blind, mute, maimed, and many others. And they laid them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. So the multitude marveled when they saw the mute speaking, the maimed made whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they glorified the God of Israel. Now Jesus called his disciples to himself.
I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way.
Where could we get enough bread in the wilderness to fill such a great multitude?
How many loaves do you have?
7, and a few little fish.
So he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fish and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples. And the disciples gave to the multitude. So they all ate and were filled. And they took up 7 large baskets full of the fragments that were left. Now those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And he sent away the multitude, got into the boat, and came to the region of Magdala.
All right. Oh, I made my screen really dumb. Okay, so like that's over there. Seems like they're in a Gentile region. There's actually a lot of fun stuff. Now we can't talk about it now. Yeah, so like that's. But that'll wet your whistle for next week. But yeah, it seems like they're in a Gentile region, and he's doing that, feeding us of 4,000. But good deal. All right, so Yeah, so we'll do this next week, and but there's no reason why. I've got a bunch of stuff coming up. I'm not going to miss Thursday. So that's one of those things. It's never expected, but you guys are always welcome to join and sing if you want. But that's, like I said, it's never expected. But it's great having everyone here, and thanks for we had a good discussion. Last few weeks, really great. Week before that, terrible. Let's see. But so we'll say goodbye to all the people that are watching on YouTube that are pre-recorded. Thanks for joining us. Okay.